Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Riancho, and it's Saturday afternoon. Time for the injury report for Week 12. After all of these player updates, I will give you my final rankings at all 5 positions and any updates to my win-loss picks or picks against the spread. Let's get going with some positive news. These are all the teams that are healthy this week on the screen. The Arizona Cardinals, Detroit Lions, Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts, LA Rams, Miami Dolphins, New England Patriots. All of those offensive players are good to go. There's also 6 teams on bye. You can't start any Buffalo Bills, Atlanta Falcons, Cincinnati Bengals, Jacksonville Jaguars, New Orleans Saints, or New York Jets. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns did play on Thursday. So you won't hear any news from any of those teams, but let's get going with the injury report in Baltimore, where Rashod Bateman is questionable with a knee injury. However, on Saturday, he was cleared to play. He was full in practice and now off the injury report, so Bateman will be active. They're going to need him against the Chargers. Backup running back Justice Hill is also off the injury report. Cleared today. He was full in practice. He was on the concussion protocol, and he is good to go. So the Ravens are healthy. In Carolina, Miles Sanders is out and placed on IR. So the backup running back role is open for Jonathan Brooks. He is now good to go. It appears that Brooks will play. He's still questionable according to the injury report, but the coach Dave Canales was quoted saying Jonathan Brooks will play this week. And with Sanders unavailable, I do think at least 5 to 10 touches should be in line for Brooks every week. Adam Thielen, though, expected to return off of IR. He's been out since like week 3 or so. And according to the coach, he will also play this week. Still questionable with a hamstring injury, but all signs are positive. Both Brooks and Thielen will suit up. Jalen Coker, another receiver for them, is probably not going to suit up with a quad injury. He's questionable, did not practice on Friday, downgraded late in the week, not expecting him to suit up. But in Chicago, the Bears running back DeAndre Swift is questionable himself with a groin injury. He did not practice Wednesday, but then limited Thursday, upgraded to full by Friday. So positive news for him, expect him to play, but Roschon Johnson maybe continues to vulture him on the goal line. Roschon has a legit role. I still think Swift is the guy you're starting, but Roschon is annoying. Keenan Allen, questionable as well with an ankle injury, full Wednesday, Thursday, but then downgraded to limited on Friday. So not ideal, never positive signs when veterans get hurt later in the week, but expecting to suit up. He at least was limited, and that's something. So the fact that he practiced a little bit is enough for me to expect him to play, but maybe more targets go to Rome Odunze. In Dallas, Dak Prescott is on IR, so backup quarterback Cooper Rush will get the start again, and probably for the rest of the season. Jake Ferguson, though, his number 1 tight end, is out with a concussion, will miss this game. And last week, he did exit early. Luke Schoonmaker really stepped up in his absence. The entire position last week for Dallas at tight end saw 16 total targets. 10 of them went to Schoonmaker. So if you are desperate at tight end, I do think the second-year player out of Michigan, Luke Schoonmaker, is an interesting pivot as a backup tight end. But off the wire, you probably have to be pretty desperate. There are better options. Hopefully you got like Will Dissly or Jonnu Smith earlier in the week. But Brandin Cooks, his 21-day window to return off IR was opened, but it does not look like he'll play this week. He was ruled out with that injury. So he was limited on Thursday, sandwiched between walkthrough practices Wednesday, Friday. Maybe he'll return next week, but even that, I think, is a little too soon to predict. So for now, Jalen Tolbert is the wide receiver 2. Kind of irrelevant, though, with Cooper Rush. In Denver, Josh Reynolds still out. He's been on IR with a finger injury for quite some time. He is practicing, but not going to play. Devon Villay remains the number 2 in Denver. In Detroit, Sam LaPorta is healthy. He's active, but last week he missed, and now he's good to go. Brock Wright has no more streaming upside. Jameson Williams maybe doesn't get as many targets, but the ceiling is still open for JMO. The floor maybe not as high with LaPorta on the field. In Green Bay, Luke Musgrave remains on IR. He is still not practicing, so Tucker Kraft is remaining the guy in the Packers offense, but Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie running back out of USC, remains out. Last week he was activated off of IR, but then on Friday he had appendicitis, and at the moment he is still not practicing. He was placed on the non-football illness list, so I'm pretty sure he had an appendectomy. I think he's still just recovering. Maybe it will keep him out for a few more weeks. Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks remain the backups behind Josh Jacobs. In Houston, Stephon Diggs remains on IR, otherwise everyone is good to go. In Kansas City, Isiah Pacheco remains on IR. He will not play this week, and that means Kareem Hunt remains the guy. It's the best matchup on paper against Carolina, so Kareem Hunt is a top 10 play this week, definitely starting him with no Pacheco. Harrison Butker is on IR, so Spencer Schrader is the backup, and Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice remain on IR. In LA for the Chargers, Ladd McConkey, questionable with a shoulder injury, remained limited on Saturday. So he is expected to play. I think he will suit up, but he didn't practice on Thursday, and he's been upgraded over the course of the week. I think he'll be all right. The game is on Monday. It's not ideal given there's no other options to pivot to other than other Chargers or Ravens in that game, but I still think McConkey will play. I think he is a must start. He's been really good as of late. So I would start him. I do think McConkey will be on the field on Monday. But Hayden Hurst, the tight end who had a potential revenge game, will be out. And that means more snaps for Will Dissly. I do think the lack of Hayden Hurst on the field definitely improves the target share for Will Dissly. So that's positive news there. No Hayden Hurst to vulture snaps. In LA, the Rams are healthy, but Tyler Higbee still not ready to come off IR. He's out, but potentially returning next week. They sounded optimistic it would happen in week 13, and we will see, but for now, Higbee is still out. In Las Vegas, Alexander Mattison and Zamir White, both top 2 running backs, are doubtful. Neither practiced all week. So Mattison has an ankle injury, Zamir has a quad injury, and that means we will see Amir Abdullah expected to get the start. There's a potential that Dylan Laube really steals some volume this week, but we've seen nothing from Laube. He fumbled on one of his only touches this season, and Abdullah has definitely earned more snaps this year. So last week when there were some injuries, Abdullah had the majority of snaps in the fourth quarter, but Laube gets some practice time this week. Maybe he gets on the field. Laube's a pass catching specialist. I'd be interested in picking up both players, honestly. I can't quite say who is the clear guy. At this moment, I would bet more money on Abdullah, but I do think Laube has higher upside if he does get the job. Laube has put up over 3,200 yards the last 2 years out of the University of New Hampshire. Really impressive numbers. Not a big school, but still, I was high on him. If you were watching me on the live stream this summer, I did draft him quite a lot in the 18th round on Underdog. So I'm a believer in him, but I think the safer play this week would be to start Abdullah. Not an ideal matchup, though, against the Broncos, and just kind of a toss-up as well. So good luck if you're going to take that gamble. I'd be interested in stashing them on my bench. I'd rather not start either guy, but if you put a gun to my head, I would go Abdullah over Laube this week. In Minnesota, Will Reichert, the kicker, is on IR, so Parker Romo, the starter once again, and the tight end Josh Oliver is out. Oliver has had an underrated role in this offense, 2 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks, so that's been a problem for TJ Hockenson. With no Oliver, Hockenson is much safer, but he hasn't been like the clear go-to option every week this season. So he does move up the rankings, but not by a lot. Johnny Munt perhaps gains the most value without Oliver on the field. But Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson may be more likely to score a touchdown. Oliver has been vulturing them a little bit lately. In New York, the Giants receiver Malik Nabers is questionable with a groin injury, and I do expect him to play. He was limited on Friday, and I don't really worry about it. It was actually the exact same situation back in week 7. He was added on Friday with a groin injury, limited in practice, and that game against Philly was not very good. But I think it was just the matchup, the Eagles secondary, not quite the same as the Bucs. So definitely still starting Malik Nabers. I'm not worried about it. The Tampa Bay defense has been trash this season. But with Tommy DeVito, kind of questionable what the situation is going to look like exactly. The quarterback is a little bit hard to trust. In Philly, Devonta Smith is out with a hamstring injury, did not practice all week long, and that means A.J. Brown, obviously a lock in your lineup already, but definitely a safer play. And same applies to Goddard, who I already thought would have a good game before I knew Devonta Smith was out. He had over 110 yards last season against the Rams as well. So definitely a must start for Goddard. A huge game expected for him on Sunday night in primetime. But who knows, maybe Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson, or Isiah Smith do get a few more reps. I wouldn't start them because Britton Covey is questionable. He might be returning from IR. He's been out for well over a month. So I'm only starting A.J. Brown and Goddard with no Devonta Smith. The target share is pretty consolidated. In Seattle, Noah Fant questionable with a groin injury, has not played the last 2 games, but trending in the right direction. It does sound likely that he will play. He did not practice on Wednesday, but then limited Thursday, full on Friday, and he is a game time decision, but I would expect him to be available. So he's ranked this week, definitely expecting Noah Fant to play. I probably wouldn't start him though. I'd rather go Luke Schoonmaker. In San Francisco, Brock Purdy is out, so Brandon Allen is the starter, and that means the entire Niners offense does get a big downgrade. Can't trust him as much. Maybe McCaffrey is a safer bet to find the end zone, but in general, these drives of theirs will stall out more often, and perhaps they need to lean on the defense. So not good news for San Francisco. George Kittle is at least active. He didn't play last week, but he will play. I don't think he's the best tight end, though, without Brock Purdy at quarterback. But we also know that Ayuk and Elijah Mitchell are on IR. Those are the only injuries other than Purdy on the offense. In Tampa, Mike Evans, questionable with a hamstring injury, has been out for several weeks, but limited Wednesday, full in practice on Thursday, and then back to limited on Friday. So given his veteran status, I think they were just testing it, seeing how he was, and making sure they did not suffer a setback on Friday. So not worried about the downgrade in terms of limited status there. I think it's just precautionary. I do expect Evans to suit up, and if he does, he's a clear must start, an obvious play with no Chris Godwin. So with Godwin on IR, Evans is obviously in your lineup. Baker Mayfield definitely gains some value with Evans back. But in Tennessee, Tyjae Spears is out with a concussion, so that's positive news for Tony Pollard, at least his fantasy potential this week. I see a lot of touches for Pollard, and Julius Chestnut will be the backup, but not someone to worry about. Definitely not starting Chestnut this week against the Texans. So Pollard is safer. But lastly, in Washington, kicker Austin Seibert is probably going to suit up. With a hip injury, he was full in practice on Friday. He's missed at least 1 or 2 games, and he will be back on the field this week. So those are all the offensive injury updates. Now it's time for the defensive players. In Baltimore, linebacker Roquan Smith is questionable. Meanwhile, cornerback Arthur Millette and safety Sanusi Kane are both out. In Dallas, we're going to get Deron Bland back on the field. He is active for the first time this season, but just as he comes back, cornerback Trayvon Diggs is out. So the Cowboys secondary just can't be fully healthy this year. In Detroit, there's a lot of new injuries. Alex Anzalone, linebacker, now placed on IR, same with safety Melifonwu, and cornerback Ennis Rakestraw is out. So is cornerback Terrion Arnold, 2 rookies, not going to play. Emmanuel Mosley also questionable in the secondary. So they're banged up. In Green Bay, cornerback Jair Alexander is out. In Houston, edge rusher Will Anderson is active. He's coming back. He's missed the last 2 games. But in Las Vegas, Nate Hobbs is out, their best corner, along with Jacorian Bennett, also out. Cornerback Jack Jones is questionable. In the Chargers defense, safety Derwin James is questionable, along with Cam Hart and Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. All 4 of them are questionable, but linebacker Denzel Perryman is out. In the Giants defense, linebacker Kayvon Thibodeau and linebacker Micah McFadden is questionable as well. In Miami, linebacker Bradley Chubb is out. Cornerback Kendall Fuller out as well. And offensive tackle Teron Armstead is questionable. In San Francisco, some major injuries. Defensive end Nick Bosa is out. Cornerback Charvarius Ward will miss his 2nd game with a personal matter of tragedy in his family. Prayers go out to Charvarius Ward. Defensive tackle Kevin Givens out, along with linebacker Tatum Bethune, and offensive tackle Trent Williams is questionable. So Niners season from hell continues. They are snake bitten this season. In Seattle, safety Rayshon Jenkins expected to return from IR, and so will cornerback Jamel Dean of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, expected to come off of IR. He's questionable this week. So is cornerback Troy Hill in Tampa. Safety Tyjae Smith, though, is doubtful for them. And in Tennessee, the injuries pile up in the secondary. Awuzie and Quandre Diggs have been on IR, but L'Jarius Sneed has missed 5 straight games. Now they're placing him on IR. He probably will be out for the remainder of the season, along with cornerback Roger McCreary, who's questionable this week, and cornerback Justin Hardy. They are completely decimated in the secondary. But lastly, in Washington, cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, who they traded for from the Saints, still not going to play. He's out, yet to make his Commanders debut this season. So that's all of the defensive injury updates. And lastly, before we get into my final rankings, there are 3 games with weather updates to mention. In the Giants-Tampa Bay game, it's not that big of a deal. I kind of only worry about it if it's over 20 miles per hour. But to start the game, the wind will be 17 miles per hour. So it's approaching a questionable level, but at the moment, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It seems like it's going to die down as the game goes on as well. In Green Bay, for the Packers-Niners game, there's a 40% chance of rain. It's mostly in the second half. Perhaps we see fewer pass attempts as the rain comes down even harder. But in Seattle and Arizona, I mentioned this yesterday in the rankings, there is a 90% chance of rain for the Seahawks game. So that is going to impact the defenses. I think they're both safer plays, and perhaps the receivers in this matchup are not quite as safe. So not anything like Thursday with the snow in Cleveland, but still, at least in Seattle, the weather is relevant. So those are all the updates this week. Let's get into my final rankings where, for the most part, running back is not that much different. I did remove Isiah Pacheco, who was previously running back 10 in the rankings, and with him not slated to play, Kareem Hunt just takes his place. I think Hunt is a clear and obvious start this week. He's been a great play this season filling in for Hunt, and against the Panthers, it's the best matchup on paper this week. Definitely a good spot for Kareem Hunt to capitalize. So I think he definitely finds the end zone. Definitely start Kareem Hunt. He is a lock in your lineup at RB10. I would not be benching him this week. I also upgraded Tony Pollard a total 6 spots, previously at number 28, now number 22. With no Tyjae Spears to worry about, the volume is a lot more secure, and that's been the problem for Pollard. The last couple games, it has been a lot closer to a 55-45 split between him and Tyjae. So I would trust him. I now rank him above Ramondre Stevenson and DeAndre Swift. I think Pollard is probably good for roughly 20 touches this week. So Texans not the best matchup, but still the volume keeps his floor high. I do think Pollard is a much safer flex play this week. He used to be on like the cusp of like start-sit consideration. Now I think he's a high-end flex option. Should go over 10 points. So with him moving up 6 spots, these other players move down 1 spot as he jumps them. But at 31, I'm slotting in Amir Abdullah versus Denver. This is exactly where I ranked Alexander Mattison earlier in the week. So outside of this start bubble, most likely I am benching him, but he is the last starting running back I did rank. I get it if you're forced to go his way. There are 6 teams on bye, so beggars can't be choosers, and it's not the worst matchup possible, and the volume should probably be favoring Abdullah, but Laube is going to catch some passes. I do think Laube could be a problem. The rookie, I think, has some upside, but I do trust the veteran to maintain most of the role this week. So I would trust Abdullah more, but at RB30, I doubt you have to start him. I'd much rather start a receiver ranked in the top 30 this week. So he moves up 15 spots, and as I remove Alexander Mattison, other players move up 1 spot as well. I did upgrade Zach Charbonnet, though, 3 spots, not just 1. So he jumps both Jerome Ford and Jonathan Brooks. I think with the rain, I could see more volume for Charbonnet. He's a bit more of a pass catcher, but I think in the run game, he will get utilized more. And I really have no idea what to expect from Jonathan Brooks, who is ranked right behind him. So I'm willing to trust Charbonnet more than Brooks. I do think he's slightly more interesting given the weather in Seattle. But other than him, the only player who enters the rankings would be Dylan Laube. I have him at number 41. I view him in the same context as a guy like Emmanuel Wilson, Imari DiMercado. You're really hoping for the best, but without a touchdown, you probably don't get over 4 points, and that is probably a liability, not worth trusting. So not going to start him, but an interesting pickup. If you want to stash Laube, there's a chance you might save yourself $10 fab dollars on Wednesday. He might be a very coveted asset off the wire, but maybe Abdullah is the better pivot. I think Abdullah has more value today. We'll find out after this game, but I do think Gus Edwards in a revenge spot is slightly more interesting than guys like Ezekiel Elliott and Devin Singletary. So I did bump up Gus Edwards up to 44. Not starting him though, just wanted to mention it. Let's move over to wide receiver now, where these are the updated rankings. I do think A.J. Brown is now the wide receiver 2. With no Devonta Smith, I'd rather go A.J. Brown than Mike Evans or Tyreek Hill. Tyreek has had a rough stretch lately. It's a good matchup for him. He usually plays well, and Mike Evans is coming off an injury. I don't think they're as guaranteed to perform as A.J. Brown, knowing Devonta is not active. So A.J. Brown moves up 2 spots, but you're starting all these players at the top here. But given the questionable status for Rashod Bateman earlier in the week, I do think Flowers is a bit safer. You know, Flowers can blow up for 100+ yards. I think he's a great play. The Chargers rank as a top 10 matchup, and I do think he's a better option than the Rams receivers going up against the Eagles' elite secondary. So I did move him up 4 spots. He was previously number 13 behind George Pickens. I still think Puka is a lock in your lineup, but I do think Flowers is better. So I upgraded him 4 spots. I really trust the volume for him this week. But Cooper Kupp feels strange to rank not side by side with Puka, and it's a weird matchup where either guy could really be shut down, but there's also like so much shootout potential. They're going to be needed desperately. I think both of them are very good plays. I see them both as top 11 options. So I did upgrade Cooper Kupp as well. I now have him right behind Puka. The matchup's not great against the Eagles, but I think you have to start both Rams receivers regardless of this matchup. So Cooper Kupp moving up a little bit. Ladd McConkey also moves up 1 spot because JSN moves down 3 spots. I had him at number 11 previously, and with all the rain, I don't know if he's as safe for like 11+ targets. He's definitely the wide receiver 1 I trust in Seattle right now, but I don't know if he's wide receiver 11. I bumped him down 3 spots because maybe a target or 2 turn into rush attempts for Kenneth Walker. So slight downgrade, but still going to start JSN. He's my favorite Seahawks receiver at the moment. Number 15, I got Malik Nabers versus Tampa Bay, and I did swap him and Marvin Harrison Jr. He moves up 2 spots as I took out Juwan Jennings. We'll get to him in a little bit. He's ranked much lower. But Nabers gets such a good matchup. Meanwhile, Harrison has to deal with the rain. I know Nabers has the groin injury, but I'm not worried about it at all. I view him and Harrison kind of identically this week. So I'm going to swap him. I think Nabers has the better matchup. I think Nabers is the better start at 15, just above Harrison. It's just a 1 spot difference for those 2 guys. But Calvin Ridley through Jamison Williams move up 1 spot as Juwan Jennings moved down 16 spots. I previously had Jennings as a top 9 receiver. So now at number 25, he's just a flex play. I'd be very concerned. There's no guarantee that the volume and chemistry is going to be there like it was with Purdy. You really have no idea what to expect from Brandon Allen. So the offense could be fine. It could be the same, and Jennings could be a weak winner. There could also be a massive drop-off, and Jennings could be a huge liability. He might not even get 5 points with Allen under center. So very risky at 25. I think he's just a floor play. I doubt the touchdown hits, but odds are he probably still sees like 7 or 8 targets from Brandon Allen. So at 25, he does move down, but at 26, I previously had Devonta Smith ranked, so everyone behind this point should be moving up 1 spot overall. But I do think Quentin Johnston and Rome Odunze move up more than that, 3 spots. I think they're better than Elijah Moore, and I also think that Deebo Samuel needs to move down. I had Deebo at 29 previously, so that's why QJ and Rome do crack the top 30. So they move up a little bit. Everybody else moves up 2 spots as Deebo Samuel moves down 9 spots overall. I'd be very concerned. Deebo's been bad this season, and that's with Brock Purdy under center. You really have no idea what to trust with Brandon Allen. So Deebo, not a safe play. I definitely bench him. I think in the same vein as Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman, a huge liability, very risky option. I'd rather avoid it. Very touchdown dependent, just the same as Nick Westbrook-Akine, who has scored 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games. So feels very strange to rank Deebo this low, but I really have no faith. I'd rather go Alec Pierce or Michael Pittman, who I did upgrade 5 spots overall. I think against the Lions, there's some catch-up mode. Definitely a lot of deep shots need to be at least attempted by Anthony Richardson. They have to test their luck down the field in order to compete. So Pierce offers that upside. I think Pittman also intriguing. They're both healthy, and I would rather go in that direction than Deebo Samuel. So very strange turn of events for Deebo this week, but as he moves down, these other players move up. But as the Colts players move up, that's why these other 3 guys move down 1 spot. 2 spots gained should be the case for everyone else because Rashod Bateman does move down. I'm a bit more worried about Bateman this week. However, I'm not going to drop him down too low. I think he's in the same vein as Josh Palmer. I am moving him down 2 total spots just because of the injury scare earlier in the week. Not that much different. It's basically the same projection, but I'd rather test my luck with one of those Carolina Panthers receivers. There's a chance that they really blow up. I think they will be needed, and Thielen could be a great pickup. Leggett usually finds the end zone, so I'm tempted to go with them. I think Bateman loses a little bit of safety given his injury on Thursday, but expect him to suit up definitely now that he's off the injury report. I do think he's fine. So Bateman in the low-end flex conversation, pretty desperate at this point, so I'm not going to mention too many changes, but I do think that battle in New England is very interesting to watch. I did upgrade Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, and Kayshon Boutte 6 spots into the top 51 for the 3 of them. So they jump some other players. Otherwise, it's kind of all guys you're ignoring. I don't think you're starting anyone outside the top 50. So that's it at receiver. Now let's move on to quarterback, where the only change is with Jared Goff. I think I was just a little too low on Goff yesterday. I'd rather go him than Jaden Daniels, who's played very poorly lately, and Baker Mayfield also slightly not as good as of late. So Goff has just been such a excellent player sometimes. His ceiling is enormous, and against the Colts, I do think they play well. I do think Goff is a top 5 play. So bumped him up 2 spots. Daniels and Baker move down, but in general, it's all kind of the same at quarterback. However, tight end does move around quite a bit. I did upgrade Dallas Goedert now to tight end number 2 spots overall because Devonta Smith is not going to play. So Goddard probably going to see 10 plus targets. Definitely trusting him this week. He probably goes over 80 yards against the Rams. So McBride and Otten moved down 1 spot. I think Goddard is a bit safer to find the end zone this week, and I do see a slightly higher ceiling for Goddard. But with Will Dissly, I'm moving him up 1 spot as Hayden Hurst has been ruled out. A few more snaps and targets probably go his way against the Ravens, and probably a shootout. So Dissly, a pretty good option, but I'm not quite ready to bump him up above guys like Andrews and LaPorta or Jonnu Smith. Dissly is a good start, top 12 this week, but in the same realm as Hunter Henry, and I only had him 1 spot lower yesterday. So only swapped him above Hunter Henry. It's kind of the same thing, but I think Dissly's a little more likely to find the end zone than Henry. They're both kind of the same, pretty safe options for 6, 7 plus points. But TJ Hawkinson is a bit more interesting with no Josh Oliver. He's been vultured lately, but still I'm not quite ready to trust TJ Hawkinson. A couple weeks ago, he had 9 targets, but last week it fell back down, and I only moved him up 2 spots. I think I'd rather go with him over Zach Ertz or Tucker Kraft, and yesterday I felt differently about that. So TJ Hawkinson in the streaming conversation at tight end 13, not a bad start, but still a bit unsafe. Not the best. And with Josh Oliver exiting the rankings, everyone behind him, starting with Cole Kmet down the list, should move up 1 spot, but I think Isaiah Likely is a bit more interesting. I do think he moves up 5 spots, given the slight injury concern for Rashod Bateman. It's probably not that big of a deal, but he did play last week and was way more involved than Mark Andrews, and perhaps he will start to continue to vulture Andrews. So I did think I was just a little too low on Likely, moved him up 5 spots today. So that's the only change at tight end, a few minor tweaks, but lastly, at defense, I do feel more confident in the Packers. Bumped him up 3 spots with the backup quarterback. They feel like a safer play this week. So Packers now at number 7. I previously had him at number 10. And they do jump the Seahawks and Cardinals with the rain in Seattle. But the Bears, I'm going to call upset here. I've changed my mind. I actually think the Bears are going to win. They are 2 plays away from beating both the Packers and the Commanders, 2 legit playoff teams in the NFC. The Sam Darnold Vikings have not been my favorite team since their bye. I think they lost some momentum, and I think the Bears' season is on the line. If they lose this, the difference between 4-7 and 5-6 is massive. Like emotionally, mentally, it's a far different situation to be in. So desperation mode, their backs against the wall. It's in Chicago. I think their defense steps up. Going to be a low-scoring game, but I will take the Bears to win. So I am swapping them and the Vikings. I would rather go with the Bears over Minnesota. But the Dolphins, I think, are a bit safer against the Patriots and the Lions against the Colts. The Lions have a good defense. I would still consider them a high floor play, but the Colts offense a little more scary than the Patriots offense. So a few minor changes, just more confidence in the Packers, the Bears, and the Dolphins defense slightly overall. So those are all the changes in my rankings. Here are the tight end, quarterback, and defensive ranks here on the screen, the top 20 at all three positions. You can pause the screen if you want to make those lineup decisions. I'll leave it up for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 seconds. Now let's show you the flex rankings here, where I do trust the top 27 running backs. I did tell you Jaylen Warren was a good flex start on Thursday, and he got the touchdown, not Najee Harris. He did have a good performance earlier in the week. So that's the cutoff point. I think once you hit Rico Dowdle, I'd be trying to bench them. So Amir Abdullah does not quite make the list in terms of starts this week. I'd much rather pivot to receiver at that point, but the point where I think it's kind of an equal trade-off would be Christian Watson, Xavier Worthy, Jalen Waddle. I think Waddle compared to Nick Chubb is relatively a similar proposition. You're hoping for the best, but you kind of know it's a risky start with them. It could work out, but at that point, I do not project over 10 points anymore. So good luck to you. If you still have any questions, let me know in the comment section. But lastly, I do want to mention my updated win-loss picks. I am making one change today. I did make a change on Thursday. I mentioned it in the video. I posted about it. I did pivot to the Browns to win on Thursday. So maybe I'm feeling extra confident, and with the extra wiggle room, you guys did take the Steelers on Thursday. I am going to gamble on it. I'm going to take the Bears over the Vikings. The Vikings have not looked great since the bye. They lost some momentum. They only put up 12 points against the Jags, only put up 23 on the Titans, and those two teams gave up 50 plus to Detroit. So the Vikings are not on the same level as the Lions, and I'm not convinced that the Bears are that much worse. I know I've been shitting on them, but I'm starting to think that maybe the change in offensive coordinator was really good for them. They were a kick away from a win against the Packers, and I do think the Packers are better than Minnesota. I understand the Vikings did beat the Packers earlier this season, but it's all relative. It's my opinion. These are my picks. I am going with the Bears. I'm calling upset here. Their last win of the season, potentially, but I do not trust Minnesota. I think the Vikings are beatable. Give me the Bears in division to put up a good fight at home. I think they limit Justin Jefferson and play well enough to get the win. I think Rome Odunze has a good game. Give me the Bears to win this week. So that's my only change straight up. However, against the spread, I am making one difference. I am no longer taking the Bucks -5. The line is actually increased. It's now not -6. So the number is definitely better in my case. I did take the -5 on Monday, but I just feel like that game could be very tight. I don't know exactly what to expect from Tommy DeVito off the bye. Brian Dable could put up a very good game plan, and the Bucks defense sucks. So I'm going to avoid that, and I'm actually going to take the Chicago Bears +3.5. I just told you I think they win, but getting that extra half point plus the field goal, I will take the hook. So give me Chicago +3.5. I was tempted to take the Colts +7.5, but odds are I'd rather not bet against Detroit. So that's the only pivot. I'm sticking with Cleveland, who I did get correct on Thursday. The Chargers +3, the Seahawks +1. This line has actually shifted. The Seahawks are now 1-point favorites, but I did get them as dogs. The Packers -2. Now they're favored by 5.5. Denver -5. Now they're favored by -6. I got some good numbers on Monday, but I'm taking the Bears +3.5. I do think they can pull off the upset. At worst, it will be within a field goal. So that's the updates, all of my changes this week, and that's going to wrap up this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. If you still have any start-sit decisions, please let me know in the comment section. I will be happy to answer them. I'll try to do it tonight, but I will do it by tomorrow morning. I'm on the West Coast, so somewhere between 8 and 9:30, I will answer your question at the latest. But that's going to be it for me. My name is Adam Riancho. Thank you so much for watching. Nice and blunt.